The woman sleeping with my ex-husband was standing beneath my gallery lights, explaining my collection to 6 strangers. Celeste Arden had moved Ruth Ibarra's blue triptych out of secured storage and hung it above the walnut viewing table. 3 smaller paintings were propped on dining chairs as if she were arranging a stylish garage sale. Gold cards bearing Celeste Arden interiors covered my inventory labels. "The right art doesn't decorate a room," she told the group. "It tells your guests who you are." My former mother-in-law, Judith, stood beside the wine with a clipboard. Daniel saw me in the doorway and didn't even look ashamed. "Mara," he said loudly, "please don't turn this into another bitter former wife performance." Every face turned toward me. Before I could answer, the front door opened again. Leonard Pike from Harbor Commercial Lending entered with a woman carrying an inspection case. His gaze traveled from my face to the empty hooks along the east wall, then to the bronze figure Celeste had shifted 6 feet from its marked pedestal. He opened his folder. "Who moved the artwork?" No one spoke. A drop of white wine slid from the lip of Judith's glass and landed on the walnut table. I watched it settle into an old pale ring, one of a dozen scars I could identify by date and guessed. Daniel had built that table when we still ate Chinese food from cartons on the floor and called exhaustion ambition. He had sanded the top by hand, complaining that my taste required lumber thick enough to survive an air raid. Now Celeste's hand rested on it as if she'd ordered it from a catalog. Leonard looked at me. "Ms. Voss?" "I can answer for the inventory under my control," I said. Daniel gave a short laugh. "That's exactly the problem. Everything has to be under Mara's control." Judith set down her glass. "Leonard, this is a private sales preview. The pieces are still on the premises." The woman beside Leonard crouched near the bronze and examined a small brass disc set into the floor. "The secured placement marker is there," she said. "The sculpture is here." "It's 6 feet, Celeste said. The woman stood. 6 feet is movement. One of the guests put down his wine. Celeste's smile survived, but the rest of her face changed around it. She wore cream trousers that probably cost more than my first exhibition's advertising budget, and her dark hair was pinned in a way meant to look accidental. I knew because, during the last year of my marriage, Daniel had started saying things like effortless elegance and spatial storytelling, phrases he had never used unless forced to read my grant applications. Leonard turned a page in his folder. "The Ibarra triptych is listed in secured storage pending condition review." "It needed to breathe," Celeste said. That almost made me admire her. "The storage room is climate controlled," I said. Daniel stepped closer. He kept his voice low this time. "Don't." It was a familiar word from him. He could fit a whole marriage inside it. "Don't embarrass Mom. Don't make a client uncomfortable. Don't ask why I came home smelling like someone else's cedar perfume." "Don't what?" I asked. His jaw tightened. Leonard glanced around the gallery. "I was told this inspection would occur during closed hours." "We are closed," Judith said. A gray-haired guest looked at the wine in his hand, then at her. "Judith, this isn't a public event, Warren?" "No," I said. "It's an unauthorized one." Celeste lifted her hand from the table. A gold bracelet clicked softly against the wood. Daniel authorized it. Leonard's eyes moved to Daniel. Daniel had the expression he used when a contractor found something expensive behind a wall. Not panic. Calculation. "As transition manager," he said, "I have authority to coordinate revenue-producing activity." "Did you authorize movement of secured inventory?" Leonard asked. "I authorized a sales preview." That wasn't my question. Judith crossed the floor toward him. At 67, she still moved as though every room had been arranged around her route through it. "Surely we can discuss technicalities without making guests feel they've wandered into a criminal proceeding." "Nobody said criminal," Leonard replied, which made 2 guests reach for their coats. Celeste tried to recover the room. "If everyone would give us 5 minutes, the terrace is lovely this time of—" "The terrace is locked," I said. She looked at Daniel. That was when I understood how she had been getting in. Not through the front door. The gallery's main key was registered to staff, and my alarm reports would have shown every opening. But Judith still had the old brass key to the courtyard door, given to her years ago for donor luncheons. We had changed the electronic locks during the renovation and left the mechanical courtyard cylinder in place because the locksmith was waiting on a part. I had reminded Daniel twice. He had said he would handle it. The lender's inspector walked toward the east wall. 5 hanging wires dangled beneath the track lights. "Where are the bell pieces?" "In viewing rooms," Celeste said. My mouth went dry. "What viewing rooms?" She hesitated. Daniel answered. "Potential placement sites." Leonard closed his folder. "Off-site?" "We can bring everything back," Daniel said. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. I looked at him. "You took secured work out of the building?" "Don't use that tone." "What tone belongs here?" "The one where you understand I'm trying to keep this place alive." Warren and the remaining guests gathered their coats without looking directly at any of us. Judith followed them toward the door, apologizing in a hushed, furious voice that made the lender's inspection sound like a plumbing emergency. Celeste began collecting her gold cards. The inspector stopped her. "Please leave the display as it is." "They're place cards." "They obscure the inventory labels." Celeste's fingers froze on the edge of one card. Leonard asked me for the movement log. Daniel answered that he had it. Then Celeste said she believed it was in the office. Then Judith, returning from the door, said the gallery registrar maintained all records. 3 answers in 10 seconds. I stayed quiet. Daniel looked at me again, and for one strange moment I saw hope in his face. He believed my silence meant I was about to help him. For years it had. 6 weeks earlier, I had still believed the worst thing Daniel had done in this building was bring Celeste to my office after closing. I learned about the affair on a Tuesday because she left a green silk scarf draped over the back of my chair. Daniel said she had been consulting on the Voss Property Company's new lobby. I asked why that required her scarf to spend the night in my office. He told me I sounded tired. The truth arrived in pieces so ordinary I almost admired its patience. A restaurant charge on the business card, 2 coffee cups in my sink, one marked with Celeste's lipstick, a florist receipt dated on a night Daniel claimed he was driving Judith home from a medical appointment. Judith had, in fact, been at Bridge Club. When I called her, not yet understanding she had been covering for him, she sighed. "Mara, marriage survives by deciding which facts deserve oxygen." I sat at the walnut table with my phone against my ear and stared at the pale rings on its surface. "Did you know?" I knew Daniel was unhappy. That wasn't my question. You've always asked questions like a prosecutor. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. He did not deny the affair. He denied its importance. "It wasn't about leaving you," he said. He stood on the other side of the table, still wearing his raincoat. Water gathered beneath him on the concrete floor. "That's your defense?" "I'm telling you the truth." "No, you're telling me the part you think should control my reaction." His face hardened. "Everything with you becomes a contract. We own a business together. We're married." Apparently, those vows were more of a mood board. He almost smiled. It was an old reflex, and watching him stop himself hurt more than if he had shouted. The divorce moved quickly because Daniel wanted it to. He'd already found an apartment, already decided the marriage had been over for years, already developed an answer for every question except when he had intended to tell me. What did not move quickly was the gallery. Voss House occupied the ground floor of a brick building Daniel's grandfather had used as a furniture showroom. The Voss Property Company owned the building. My company owned the gallery business, its fixtures, a portion of the collection, and a mountainous pile of obligations. Daniel had managed banking, insurance, contractors, and rent. Untangling him overnight would have shut us down. So, against my lawyer's advice and my own better judgment, I agreed to a 6-month transition. Daniel kept limited authority to process approved expenses, coordinate building access, and transfer vendor relationships. The rent concession remained in place until the transition ended. "You need me," he said after we signed. "I need continuity." He leaned back in his lawyer's conference chair. That's a prettier word. Judith interpreted the divorce as a temporary illness in the family brand. She kept appearing at the gallery with donors, caterers, florists, and ideas. The first time I asked for her courtyard key, she pressed her palm to her chest. "You gave me that key." "For events. I've raised more money in that courtyard than you made from your last 2 openings." "That doesn't make the key ceremonial." She laughed as though I had made a joke, kissed my cheek, and left with it still in her purse. I told Daniel to retrieve it. "I will," he said. The replacement courtyard lock was delayed. Then a donor luncheon appeared on the calendar in Judith's handwriting. 30 place settings, white roses, a rental invoice billed to my operating account. I canceled the rental and moved the luncheon to the upstairs suite controlled by the property company. Judith didn't speak to me for 9 days. On the 10th, she arrived carrying soup. That was her gift. Judith could make aggression feel petty and affection feel like evidence against you. The soup was chicken with lemon, my favorite, in the blue Dutch oven I had given her for Christmas. She set it on the walnut table and looked at the canceled invoice beside my laptop. "You and Daniel are punishing the building for what happened in your bedroom," she said. "The building seems emotionally stable." There. That little knife you slip between the ribs, then you smile. "I'm not smiling." "You used to." She left the soup. I ate it for 3 nights. The gallery needed every dollar. 18 months earlier, a burst pipe had destroyed flooring 2 weeks before our winter exhibition. Insurance covered part of the repair. The rest came from a harbor commercial lending facility that I personally guaranteed. The collateral schedule included 11 gallery-owned pieces and certain receivables. Each work had a numbered location, a condition report, and a movement protocol. Daniel had negotiated the terms with me. "Harbor doesn't care about art," he'd said as we signed. "They care that the art stays where the paperwork says it stays." That sentence returned to me the first time I noticed Ruth Ibarra's triptych missing from the storage map. It was a Thursday morning, 2 weeks before Leonard walked into Celeste's private tour. The triptych was still in the storage room, but someone had shifted it from rack C to rack A and removed its muslin cover. Owen, my registrar, frowned at the clipboard. I didn't move it. Did Daniel? He asked me for photos on Monday. What kind of photos? Room shots. Said a buyer wanted scale. Which buyer? Owen rubbed the corner of the clipboard against his sweater. He was good with objects because they never asked him to improvise. Celeste. I called Daniel from the storage room. He answered on the 4th ring. I'm in a meeting. Why did you request photographs of secured work for Celeste? A pause, then the faint squeak of a chair. She has a client who's interested. She can bring the client during business hours. Her clients value discretion. So does our lender. He exhaled. This is what I mean. Someone expresses interest and you build a checkpoint. I told her no last month. You told her no because she's Celeste. I told her no because she asked to photograph work before we had image permissions. You see, contract, rule, procedure, it's exhausting. I looked at the triptych, 3 fields of blue darkening toward black. Did you move it? No. Did she? I'm in a meeting, Mara. He hung up. I checked the electronic access log. Nothing unusual appeared. That should have reassured me. Instead, I walked to the courtyard door and tested the old brass cylinder. The lock turned smoothly. Behind me, Owen cleared his throat. When I looked around, he was staring at the walnut table through the open storage door. There were glasses on it Monday morning, he said. What kind of glasses? Wine. I washed them. Why didn't you tell me? His cheeks reddened. Daniel said Judith had brought 2 donors by. He said it was approved. By whom? Owen gave me a miserable look. I took out my phone and photographed the triptych where it stood, then the rack label, then the storage map. Small facts, separate facts, nothing that proved the shape forming around them. That afternoon, Judith came in with a florist and acted surprised to see me. A week later, Celeste emailed, asking whether the bronze figure could be shown in a warmer residential context. I replied that secured works could not be moved without written approval. Daniel forwarded my response back to me with one sentence: "You don't have to make every boundary a wall." I printed it and placed it in the transition binder. Now Leonard Pike stood in my office doorway while his inspector photographed Celeste's gold cards and the empty hooks. Daniel had finally produced a movement log. I could see from 6 feet away that it wasn't ours. The paper was too white, the grid too narrow, the binder clean where mine had a coffee stain shaped like Florida. Leonard held out his hand to me. "Ms. Voss, do you have another copy?" Daniel answered before I could. "This is the current log." I met his eyes. He gave the smallest shake of his head, a private warning, or a plea. Behind him, on the walnut table, Judith's spilled wine had reached the edge of Celeste's guest list. The ink began to feather, 6 names blurring into blue veins. "Yes," I said. "I have another copy." I reached past Daniel and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. The real movement log was under the transition binder, exactly where it had been since Friday. Its black cover had a coffee stain shaped like Florida and a strip of blue tape along the spine. I put it beside Daniel's clean binder. Leonard compared the first pages. His inspector did not need long. "These entries diverge on June 3rd. "That's an old working copy," Daniel said. "No," Owen said from the doorway. We all turned. He looked sick, but he came into the office anyway. "The blue one is current. I enter every movement and Mara initials the weekly review." Daniel's gaze fixed on him. "You told me the system was being updated." "The digital system, not that." Leonard tapped the clean binder. "Who prepared this version?" Daniel slid both hands into his pockets. "I don't know." Celeste appeared behind Owen. "I had my assistant format something because the old document looked unprofessional." "You reformatted a collateral record?" Leonard asked. "It was a spreadsheet." "Did your assistant invent the entries?" Celeste's smile disappeared completely. "I was trying to help Daniel present the collection." Judith's voice came from the gallery. "Celeste, could I speak with you?" Celeste stayed where she was. Leonard asked Owen for the last verified inventory. Owen reached toward the blue binder, then stopped and looked at me. I nodded. The inspector began matching entries to photographs. My signature appeared beside every approved movement through the previous Friday. After that, 3 works had penciled notations in Owen's narrow handwriting. The Bell landscapes had moved to photography, then returned to storage, according to the page. "They didn't return," I said. Owen stared at the line. "Daniel told me they had." "Did you verify?" "No." The word barely came out. Daniel stepped toward him. "Because I told you they were at the Fulton property for less than 48 hours. I felt something cold move through me. The Fulton property was a vacant luxury condo the Voss company had been trying to sell for nearly a year." "Who took them there?" Leonard asked. "An insured art handler." "Which one?" "I'll get you the invoice." Celeste folded her arms. "This is getting theatrical." I turned to her. "You put collateral in a condo to sell your design services. I put paintings in a controlled property to show serious buyers what they looked like in a home. You offered them for temporary placement." Her eyes sharpened. "I did no such thing." "Your email used the phrase residential context. That is not an offer." Daniel moved between us with the weary expression of a man separating 2 unreasonable strangers. "The works are safe. Let's focus on correcting the paper." Leonard closed both binders. "Harbor will focus on the loan agreement. Until we complete a compliance review, no collateral moves, no sales involving scheduled assets, no new disbursements from the line. My operating account depended on that line for a freight payment due Monday." "How long?" I asked. "That depends on how quickly we locate everything and establish who had authority." "I had authority," Daniel said. I looked at him. Leonard did too. We'll need that in writing. For the first time that afternoon, Daniel seemed to understand the usefulness of silence. The guests were gone when we returned to the gallery. Judith stood at the walnut table, blotting wine from the wood with one of my linen polishing cloths. She pressed hard enough to drive the stain deeper. "Stop," I said. She lifted the cloth. "I'm cleaning up." "You're grinding it in." "It's a table, Mara. It's my table." Daniel laughed once, without humor. "There she is." Leonard's inspector photographed the stain, the cards, the bottles, and each displaced work. When she finished, Leonard handed me his business card despite having known me for 3 years. "Send the access records, insurance certificate, current lease, and all communications concerning off-site placement by noon tomorrow." "I will." "Send them to me too," Daniel said. Leonard looked at me. "Is Mr. Voss your authorized representative?" "He was authorized for limited transition tasks." "Was?" Daniel's face changed before mine did. I took out my phone and called the bank. It took 22 minutes, 2 transfers, and a security question about the street where I had opened my first checking account. Everyone remained in the gallery while I revoked Daniel's purchasing authority. There was nothing dramatic about it. A woman named Keisha read disclosures in a pleasant voice. I confirmed the last 4 digits of the account. Daniel watched me remove him from a business he still believed would come back when I calmed down. When I hung up, Judith said, "You may have just made payroll impossible." Daniel's authority has nothing to do with payroll. He manages cash flow. He moved collateral off-site to help you sell it, to help Celeste sell herself. Celeste picked up her purse. "I'm not staying here to be degraded." The sentence was so polished, I wondered how many rooms it had already rescued her from. Daniel reached for her elbow. She moved before he touched her. "You told me this was permitted," she said. "It is. We just need to document it correctly." "No, Daniel. You told me Mara had agreed." Judith looked at him. So did I. He lowered his voice. "I said Mara had agreed that private sales were necessary." "That is not what you said." The first crack between them was small, but it ran cleanly. Celeste walked out through the front door. Daniel followed her. Judith did not. She stood beside the table, still holding the damp cloth. "You could have handled this privately." "I tried to. You sent the lender after your own husband, ex-husband. 6 weeks does not erase 14 years. No. Apparently, 14 years couldn't protect themselves." Her mouth tightened. "Daniel did a foolish thing because he's terrified." "Of what?" "That you'll run this place into the ground just to prove it was yours." I looked around at the dangling wires and Celeste's gold cards. Judith set the cloth down. "He watched you love this gallery more carefully than you ever loved him." There it was, the blade inside the soup. I expected anger. Instead, I remembered Daniel on the floor during our first winter here, blowing sawdust off a carton of noodles because we had nowhere else to eat. I remembered him holding the walnut planks upright while I chose which grain would face the room. There had been a time when he understood that my care was not a rival. "I was careful with him," I said. Judith looked away first. Owen and I spent the evening returning the gallery to its inventory map. The bronze went back over the brass marker. The Ibarra triptych returned to rack C under fresh muslin. We found 2 of the missing gold cards beneath the table and 1 inside a wine bucket. At 9, Owen ordered sandwiches. At 10, he stopped pretending he could eat his. "I'm sorry," he said. "For which part?" He flinched. I softened my voice. "I need to know, Owen." He folded the wax paper into smaller and smaller squares. "Daniel told me the tours were approved. He said you didn't want to know the details because of Celeste." That sounded like me. It sounded like something people might agree to in a divorce. What people? Healthier ones? I laughed despite myself. He smiled for half a second, then looked down. He said if I kept turning every request into a permission issue, the property company would stop subsidizing my position. The property company doesn't employ you. I know that now. I sat across from him. The table smelled faintly of wine and the beeswax polish we used after events. How many tours? 3 that I saw evidence of, maybe 4. Off-site pieces? The bells. The bronze once, but only to the courtyard. A small oil by Navarro. I think Celeste took it to photograph fabric samples. My stomach turned. The Navarro is a consignment. I know. Where is it? Back in storage. Did the artist approve? Owen shook his head. I called Helena Navarro the next morning before sending anything to Harbor. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "I want the painting back. I understand. And the 2 smaller works. They weren't moved. I want them back anyway." I looked through my office window. Owen was removing Celeste's cards from the floor one by one. Of course. By noon, I had called every affected artist. Ruth Ibarra agreed to let the triptych remain if I provided a new condition report. The Bell brothers wanted proof their landscapes had not been damaged at the condo. Helena sent a courier that afternoon. News traveled through the artist community faster than freight and with less packaging. By Friday, 4 additional consigners requested early return of their work. My next exhibition lost a third of its inventory. Daniel came in while I was wrapping the last Navarro. He set a paper bag on my desk. Turkey on rye. I'm not hungry. You always say that at 2 and eat crackers at 6. He took the sandwich out, placed it on a napkin, and lined up the corners with the edge of my desk. Familiarity could be a form of trespassing, too. Harbor called our insurance broker, he said. Good. They're suggesting we add a third-party inventory monitor. Do you know what that costs? Less than a missing bell. The bells aren't missing. Then bring them back. They're coming Monday. Why not today? The handler is booked. Which handler? His shoulders dropped. Can we talk without you taking minutes? I've been trying that for 14 years. He sat opposite me. The office chair squeaked beneath him. I screwed up. The apology was so direct that I almost failed to recognize it. Yes. I thought if Celeste could bring in a few buyers, it would take pressure off the summer numbers. Why didn't you ask me? Because you would have said no. That's why. I knew the work was safe. You knew the rules. The rules are going to close this gallery. The loan kept it open, and my family kept the rent low. My contacts filled your openings. My company carried maintenance you couldn't afford. I stared at him. Is that what you told yourself when you handed her the key? His face closed. You gave Celeste Judith's courtyard key. Mom gave it to her, and you knew. She needed access before a showing. To my gallery. To the building my family owns. There it was at last, not a mistake, not confusion. The border he had always seen beneath our marriage. He pushed the sandwich toward me. I am trying to make sure there's something left when this anger burns off. My anger isn't a weather event. No, it's a management strategy. I stood and put the sandwich back in its bag. Your transition authority is revoked. By Monday, I want every password, vendor contact, and insurance record transferred. You can't run operations alone. I won't be alone. Owen? The way he said the name made me look through the window. Owen was standing beside the walnut table with Celeste. I had not heard her enter. A thick cream envelope lay between them. Daniel watched my face. She offered him a job yesterday, he said, twice his salary. I went out to the gallery. Celeste wore black now, severe and immaculate. This isn't what it looks like. Is it a sandwich? Owen shut his eyes. Celeste ignored me. I'm opening a sourcing studio. Owen understands inventory and client placement. He understands consent, too. He's learning fast. That's enough, Owen said. His voice had never been loud in the gallery. It seemed to startle him more than us. He picked up the envelope. I need health insurance. I need a job where the landlord isn't threatening my salary and the owner isn't asking me to choose which version of the boss is real. I'm the owner, I said. I know. His eyes shone. But Daniel was my boss whenever you needed him to be. That landed because it was true. He gave me 2 weeks' notice. I told him I would pay all of it even if he left early. Celeste looked disappointed that we had not made her fight harder. After they were gone, Daniel remained near the door. "You can still fix this," he said. "How?" "Stop treating every person who disagrees with you like contaminated inventory." I looked at the empty spaces on the east wall. "Bring back the bells." He left without answering. They came back Monday morning in a landscaping van. No climate control, no art handling rails. Moving blankets smelled of grass and gasoline. One frame had a fresh, silver scrape along its bottom edge. Harbor's inspector arrived before the blankets were off. By lunchtime, the loan review had become a formal cure notice. By 3, the Bell brothers had withdrawn every work they had with me and demanded reimbursement for restoration. At 4:15, the property company emailed notice that masonry repairs would begin during my August opening week. Scaffolding would block the front windows, and the courtyard would be closed for safety. I called Daniel. "You said that work was scheduled for October." The engineer moved it up. "Move it back. It's a building safety issue." "Since this morning?" "I don't control concrete, Mara." "No, just keys, vans, staff, leases, and every fact you think I won't check." His voice went very quiet. "You wanted me out of operations. This is what out feels like." The line went dead. I sat at the walnut table until the late sunlight turned every glass ring white. Then I opened the lease. The masonry clause was exactly where Daniel knew it would be. Section 14 gave the property company the right to perform structural work with reasonable notice. It also gave me the right to terminate if that work materially obstructed public access for more than 10 business days. Daniel had scheduled 9. I read the sentence until the words felt personal. My lawyer, Nina Patel, read it once the next morning and said, "He knows the lease. He helped write it. Then he knows 9 days hurts you without releasing you. So I get an injunction? You get a bill from me, a delayed hearing, and scaffolding outside your opening while we argue about the meaning of reasonable." She pushed the lease back across her desk. Nina was good because she never performed certainty for money. It was an admirable quality that occasionally made me want to throw things. "What can I do?" "Ask the engineer whether the work is urgent. Ask for the permits and bids. Document interference. Negotiate. With Daniel. With the property company. Daniel is the property company when he wants something. And when he doesn't. Judith." I laughed. Nina did not. She opened the cure notice from Harbor. I had 10 business days to verify the entire secured collection, restore compliant storage, produce an accurate chain of custody for every moved work, and demonstrate exclusive control over access. Harbor would then decide whether to reopen the credit line. "If they don't?" I asked. "You either refinance, sell approved assets with Harbor's consent, or close." The word landed with less drama than I expected. It sounded like a task on a list. Nina watched me absorb it. "You can also negotiate an orderly surrender." I built that gallery. I know. At the beginning, the ceiling leaked in 5 places. Daniel and I put cooking pots under the drips because we couldn't afford buckets and dinner. I know. The first winter, we heated the office with 2 space heaters and optimism. That sounds unsafe. It was mostly optimism. Her mouth tilted. I looked at the lease again. If I leave, Judith gets exactly what she wants. What does she want? To prove the gallery was a Voss family gift. And what do you want? I almost said to keep it. The answer felt automatic, like reaching for a light switch in a room where the furniture had been moved. I want them to stop touching what's mine. Nina nodded. That's a different goal. I began with the keys. A locksmith replaced the courtyard cylinder before lunch. I gave numbered keys to myself and the temporary inventory consultant Harbor required. Owens remained active through his notice period, but I changed the alarm so every entry generated an alert on my phone. Judith arrived as the locksmith packed his drill. What have you done? Changed a lock. That door belongs to the building. The cylinder is a gallery fixture. I'll restore the original when the lease ends. The lease is not ending. I held out my hand. I still need your key. She stared at my palm. It was a gift. It was access. To you, perhaps. What was it to you? Her fingers went to the side pocket of her purse. She took out the old brass key and laid it in my hand. The teeth were worn smooth at the peaks. A red ribbon I had tied through the head 8 years earlier was still attached, faded, almost pink. I brought 50 people through that door before anyone knew your name, she said, and then I made them want to come back. Her face tightened. You always have to take the whole compliment. I'm not sure where you put one. She turned toward the walnut table. The wine stain had dried near the end where she used to sit during planning meetings. You know Daniel built that for you. Yes? He spent 3 weekends on it. I was there. He called me because he couldn't get the joinery square. He was terrified you'd think he wasn't good enough for your perfect room. The memory came back with splinters in it. Daniel refusing to let me see the unfinished top. Daniel covering a bad joint with his body when I walked into the workshop. Daniel bringing the table in after midnight and pretending he had always known it would fit through the doors. I never needed perfect, I said. No, you needed everything done your way. He slept with Celeste. Judith's chin lifted. I'm aware. You say that like he chose the wrong grout. I say it like I can't make him undo it. But you could help him hide it. For once, she did not have an answer ready. I placed the brass key on the table between us. Did you give this to Celeste? She needed to open for a florist. There was no florist at the tour. There was supposed to be. Did you know about the Fulton condo? Judith looked toward the courtyard. You knew, I said. I knew Celeste was staging it. Daniel said the paintings had been cleared. You knew he was using my work to furnish the place where he meets her clients. It is not your work. You didn't paint it. That sentence is why you will never have another key. She flinched. It was small and satisfying, and I hated that it satisfied me. The next day, I canceled the gallery's payments for lobby cleaning, exterior window service, courtyard landscaping, and the monitoring contract on the upstairs suite. Daniel called within an hour. You can't cut building services. I cut gallery payments for building services. Your company owns the building. We bundled those contracts to save you money. You bundled the invoices into my account. The rent concession accounts for that. It doesn't, Nina checked. A pause. You're really doing this. I thought you liked boundaries when they came with spreadsheets. The landscaper stopped trimming the courtyard. The upstairs alarm company called Daniel for a new payment method. The window cleaner skipped the second floor and polished my street glass beneath the posted construction notice. Judith called the result shabby. Daniel called it vindictive. I called it Thursday. It also cost me. Separate freight insurance was more expensive without the property company's policy. A new bookkeeper charged twice what Daniel had allocated to himself because competent people expected to be paid. The temporary inventory consultant found 3 years of sloppy vendor classifications and 1 annual filing due in 12 days. Owen worked quietly through all of it. Celeste's cream envelope disappeared into his bag, but he kept showing up at 9. He cataloged frame damage, rebuilt the location map, and apologized to every artist whose trust he had helped weaken. On his last scheduled afternoon, he stood beside the storage racks holding his blue clipboard. I can stay through the opening, he said. With me? I haven't signed Celeste's offer. Why not? She wants me to certify that the off-site movements were standard client previews. Were they? No. I waited. He stared at Rack C. I still need the money. I know. I wish you'd tell me not to take it. I can tell you what I want, I can't make it fair. He smiled sadly. That's a very Mara answer. What would a healthier person say? Probably something about following my heart. Your heart has terrible health insurance. He laughed, And then he cried so abruptly he turned his face toward the shelves. I pretended to inspect a condition report until he could speak. "I'll finish the harbor audit," he said. "Then I'm leaving." "All right." It wasn't all right, but it was clean. We completed the inventory with 2 days left in the cure period. Every secured piece was accounted for. The bells were at a conservator, with restoration costs documented. Harbor approved Ruth Ibarra's updated condition report. The bronze remained on its brass marker. I sent Leonard the new key register, alarm protocol, insurance certificate, and written revocation of Daniel's authority. His reply arrived at 6:42 p.m. Compliance conditions remain under review. I was still staring at it when Warren Feld knocked on the front glass. He had been one of Judith's closest friends for 30 years, a retired hotel developer with silver hair and the patient expression of a man accustomed to receiving the better table. At Celeste's tour, he'd been the first guest to put down his wine. I let him in. "I dislike locked doors," he said. "I've developed a taste for them." He glanced at the brass disc beneath the bronze. "I suppose that's sensible." "What can I do for you, Warren?" He removed a gold card from his jacket. It matched the ones Celeste had placed over my inventory labels. "I bought the Navarro oil." I stared at him. "Helena's painting?" "Green room, red bowl. Judith said it would suit my library." That work was returned to the artist. I know. Helena's assistant called my office because Celeste gave her my delivery information. I read the card. The price was $28,000, $6,000 above Helena's gallery price. "Did you pay this?" "A deposit." "To whom?" "Celeste's company." She described the difference as a residential integration fee. She put a commission on artwork she didn't represent. She also suggested I let her place 2 additional works in my home for a 60-day trial. He handed me a cream envelope. Inside was a thick invitation for a Sunday private collection tour at the Fulton property. Beneath the address, in narrow gold lettering, were the words "Curated residential placements available for acquisition or trial." Sunday was 3 days away. "Where did you get this?" "Judith sent it before your interesting afternoon with the lender." "Why are you giving it to me now?" He sat at the walnut table without asking. "Because I called her this morning. She told me the extra $6,000 was necessary to cover your unreasonable commission." "My commission is already in Helena's price." "I know that now." "Did Judith know?" "She knew enough to ask me not to trouble you with accounting details." He ran one finger along a pale ring in the wood. "Your former mother-in-law confuses loyalty with accepting her version of events," he said. "I've indulged that habit because she once indulged mine." "What changed?" She made me feel cheap for noticing I'd been overcharged. It was such a Warren answer that I believed him. "What do you want?" My deposit returned. "I don't have it. Celeste does, but you have the painting she purported to sell. Helena has it." He frowned at the gold card as though it had personally displayed poor manners. "Then Celeste sold me a painting she could neither deliver nor represent." "Yes. And Daniel allowed this?" "I can prove he allowed the tours. I don't know what he knew about your payment." Warren looked toward the empty east wall. "Judith says you're trying to bankrupt the building. Judith says my care is a personality defect. She admires you. That must be exhausting for her." "It is." He stood. "Keep the invitation. I'm going to give Celeste until tomorrow to return my money. And if she does, I'll still remember asking." After he left, I called Leonard. He listened while I described the invitation. "Send me a copy," he said. "Will Harbor attend on Sunday?" "Harbor does not conduct ambushes. She's advertising your collateral for trial placement. If scheduled assets are present, document what you lawfully can and notify us. It was not the rescue I wanted." That night, the first metal braces for the scaffolding arrived and were stacked across the sidewalk outside my windows. Daniel was there at 7 the next morning, waiting beside them. "Warren called my mother," he said. "Then you know Celeste owes him $6,000. She charged a styling fee on Helena's painting. The client pays for a complete service. The artist didn't authorize the sale. He'll get his deposit back. You say that like money reverses the lie. He rubbed both hands over his face. He looked tired, genuinely tired, and some disobedient part of me still wanted to take him inside and make coffee. Call off the masonry work, I said. I can't. Move it 1 week. The crew has another job. Then tell Judith the gallery closes if Harbor accelerates the loan. He looked at me through the steel braces. Maybe closing is the only sane option. The words came gently. That made them worse. You want me gone. I want this fight to stop consuming every room. You brought it into every room. I brought in someone who saw a future. You keep preserving the past and calling it standards. I looked through the glass at the walnut table, half hidden behind his reflection. Did you approve trial placements? He did not answer. Did you approve Celeste taking secured art into private homes? I approved a sales strategy. You knew the lender could close me. I knew you could cure a technical breach. Something in me became very still. He had noticed the risk. He had calculated that I would absorb it. You thought I'd clean it up, I said. You always do. He meant it as faith. That was the deepest cut he had left me. I stepped around him and unlocked the gallery. Not this time. At noon, Owen called from Celeste's new studio. He had taken the job after all. I need to show you something, he said, but if she finds out, I'm finished. On my screen, an email from the property company arrived with the final masonry schedule. 9 business days beginning Monday. Sunday evening, Celeste would host one more tour at Fulton. Monday morning, Daniel expected me to start cleaning up. Owen chose a diner 2 blocks from Celeste's studio and arrived carrying the blue clipboard as if he were still on my payroll. You can't tell her I gave you this. I won't lie if I'm asked directly. He slid into the booth opposite me. You could try being comforting once. I'm paying for your coffee. It's diner coffee. That's an administrative expense. The joke fell flat between us. He unlocked his phone and opened a folder of loading photographs. The first showed the Bell landscapes inside the Fulton condo, leaning against a marble fireplace. The timestamp was 11 days before their return. In the second, the Navarro oil hung above a bar cart. A glass had been set on the frame's lower edge while someone adjusted a light. I enlarged the image until the glass became a blur of reflected gold. Who took these? Celeste. She had me build presentation decks. You knew the bells were still there. Not at first. She sent me the folder after I started yesterday. He showed me a chain of messages. Celeste had asked Daniel whether Mara would notice if they used the Ibarra for Sunday's tour. Daniel answered that the courtyard lock had been changed and told her to use photographs instead. Farther down, Judith supplied a list of guests and warned them not to call the gallery because Mara was creating compliance drama. Then Owen opened a document bearing his name. It certified that all off-site movements had followed established gallery procedure. I didn't sign it, he said. The signature line was blank. What did Celeste say? That signing would help resolve the confusion I created. You didn't create it. I entered a false return. Because Daniel told you the paintings were back. I should have checked. Yes. He recoiled. I hated the word as soon as I said it, but I did not take it back. I should have checked him too, I said. For years. Owen stared at his coffee. That doesn't make me feel better. It wasn't supposed to. I sent the photographs and messages to myself while he watched. He would not forward the presentation decks because they contained client information. So I photographed the relevant screens and noted when and where I received them. It was clumsy evidence, not courtroom perfection. It was enough to show Leonard what had happened. Before Owen left, he put the clipboard on the table. This belongs to the gallery. You can keep it. I don't want to. He stood, then hesitated. Celeste thinks you'll come to Fulton Sunday and make a scene. What does Daniel think? That you won't risk looking emotional in front of Harbor. I turned the clipboard over. The bottom edge was soft from years against Owen's sweaters. He knows me well, I said. I did not go to Fulton. I spent Sunday in the gallery with the inventory consultant, photographing every secured object beneath that day's newspaper and sending the complete file to Leonard. At 6, my alarm application showed no unauthorized entry. At 7, Warren texted that Celeste's tour consisted of enlarged photographs, fabric samples, and a long explanation about why the original collection was temporarily unavailable. At 7:30, he sent another message. Deposit returned. I expected triumph. What I felt was tired. The formal compliance meeting began Monday at 9 behind scaffolding. Leonard arrived with the inspector. Nina sat beside me. Daniel brought the property company's attorney. Judith brought herself. Celeste came 10 minutes late and asked where she should sit. At a different table, I said. There was only one table in the gallery. She took the far end. The metal braces outside turned the morning light into gray bars across the floor. Every few minutes, a worker's boot passed at window height. Leonard laid the 2 movement logs side by side. Then came the photographs, the invitations, Celeste's gold price card, the messages about the courtyard key, and the unsigned certification prepared in Owen's name. He asked each question without raising his voice. Celeste admitted her assistant had created the clean log from information Daniel provided. Daniel said it was meant as a client-facing inventory, not a compliance record. Judith said she had understood all the works to be insured. The property attorney interrupted twice to clarify that ownership of the building did not imply responsibility for gallery operations. Then Leonard placed the photograph of the Navarro above the bar cart in front of Celeste. Who moved the artwork? The same question, a different room, though we had not left it. Celeste looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at his mother. Judith studied the pale rings in the walnut. I arranged the van, Daniel said. What van? Leonard asked. A company landscaping vehicle. Who loaded the works? The Fulton building superintendent and I. Did Ms. Arden direct placement? Yes. Did Mrs. Voss provide access? Judith spoke before Daniel could. I gave Celeste my key. I was told Mara had approved private previews in principle. That isn't true, I said. Judith looked at me. I know that now. It was the first useful thing she had said in weeks. Daniel shifted in his chair. Mom, don't. No. She turned toward him. You said the only obstacle was paperwork. You did not tell me Mara had refused. I told you she was being impossible. That is not the same thing. Celeste's laugh was quiet and sharp. You both knew exactly why we weren't telling her. Judith went white. There was the second crack, no longer small. Leonard asked whether anyone had offered secured pieces for trial placement. Celeste said the offer was conceptual. Daniel said he had not approved trials. Judith said Warren had misunderstood. I let them talk. For 14 years, I had stepped in when Daniel's explanations began colliding. I would translate his intention, soften Judith's certainty, find the invoice, call the vendor, make the room usable again. I sat with my hands folded on the blue clipboard. Celeste finally turned to me. You know none of this damaged your collection, except that frame, which Daniel has offered to restore. You're allowing a technical issue to destroy a functioning business. The business wasn't functioning, I said. I was. Leonard called a recess. We waited beneath the track lights while drills started outside. Celeste whispered with Daniel. Judith sat alone at the end of the walnut table, pressing one thumb into the wine stains she had made. Leonard returned with 2 letters. Harbor would not reopen the credit line while the collateral remained in premises accessible to the property company under the current lease arrangement. It would suspend acceleration for 30 days if I moved the secured works to approved storage, maintained independent insurance, and submitted a plan for compliant operations without Daniel. The second letter reserved Harbor's right to pursue costs associated with the breach. Daniel read my copy over my shoulder. That's impossible, he said. You can't operate a gallery without a collection on site. I can move non-secured consignments after authorization. You can't afford storage and rent. No. The words stopped him. I had spent 2 days building a spreadsheet I did not want to believe. With the credit line frozen, the artists leaving, the scaffolding blocking the opening, and the new compliance costs, Voss House had 8 weeks if nothing else went wrong. Nothing else had to go wrong. The room itself was enough. Nina placed a termination proposal in front of the property attorney. I would surrender the premises in 21 days. The Voss company would release my remaining rent obligation and reimburse the gallery for prepaid building services. I would restore the courtyard cylinder and remove all business-owned fixtures except permanent lighting. Daniel stared at the proposal. "You planned this." I counted. Judith looked up. "You can't leave. You wanted the building back. I wanted you to stop acting as if we were intruders. You used a key after I asked for it. It was one luncheon. It was every time you believed your intention mattered more than my answer." Her voice broke on the last word. "This place is part of our family. It was part of our marriage." Daniel pushed his chair back. "We're not signing this." The property attorney bent toward him and murmured something. The building had an empty upper suite, active repair costs, and no replacement tenant. Releasing me was not generous. It was a wager that Celeste's private tours could become a real business once my company was gone. Celeste saw the same opening. "We could establish a design showroom here," she said. "There's already client interest." I watched Daniel's anger turn into arithmetic. That hurt too. I had spent days bracing myself to give up the room, and he needed less than a minute to imagine it without me. Judith did not. "Mara curated this place," she said. Celeste's expression cooled. "Mara is choosing to leave." "No," Judith said. "We made it impossible for her to stay." Daniel signed before his mother could say anything else. I signed last. For 21 days, I dismantled my life in measured pieces. The secured collection went to harbor-approved storage. Ruth Ibarra helped me wrap her triptych and stayed afterward to drink terrible coffee on the floor. Nina negotiated a payment schedule for the Bell restoration. 2 consigners agreed to follow me if I found a new space. 3 did not. Owen came after hours to finish reconciling records. Celeste fired him when she learned the certification remained unsigned. "I lasted 4 days," he said. 5. Sunday was orientation. I hired him for 10 hours a week until he found something stable. It was all I could afford. He accepted without pretending it was enough. Celeste sent the Voss company invoices for staging, marketing, client refunds, and consulting work Daniel believed had been included in their partnership. Warren's $6,000 appeared as a reimbursement line. Daniel disputed half the charges. Celeste removed her samples from Fulton before the argument was resolved. She stayed with him another month, long enough for each of them to discover that shared resentment was not the same thing as shared plans. Judith came to the gallery on my final evening. Most of the track lights were off. The walls were patched. Only the walnut table remained in the middle of the floor. "Daniel says the table stays," she said. "He bought the lumber through the property company. You designed it." He kept the receipt. I ran my hand across the top. The surface held our whole history badly. Saw marks beneath the finish, wine rings, a dark burn from the first winter's space heater, the fresh stain Judith had driven into the grain. "I could challenge him," I said. "Will you?" "No." She stood beside me. "I'm sorry." It was too small, which was probably why I believed it. "For the affair?" I asked. "For deciding his fear mattered more than your no." I looked at her. She touched the faded red ribbon on the old courtyard key. It lay on the table, ready to be returned with the building. "He was afraid you'd discover you didn't need him," she said. "I did need him. I know. That's what he used." Judith closed her fingers around the key. She did not ask to visit my next gallery. I did not invite her. The place I found was a former print shop on a side street, half the size of Voss House and nowhere near as beautiful. The floor sloped toward the back. The office had one outlet. Owen said the freight door looked judgmental. The rent was mine to pay, at full price. Harbor approved the new security plan and reopened a smaller credit line after I moved the collateral into its locked storage room. Leonard did not congratulate me. He asked for quarterly reports. I was grateful for the lack of ceremony. On opening morning, Ruth arrived with bagels and told me the walls looked hungry. We hung her smallest new painting near the front, a square of deep blue breaking around a line of white. I had no walnut table. I used 2 steel work tables pushed together, their surfaces already scratched from the print shop. Before the doors opened, I unpacked one last object from my desk box, a scarred brass label from the old gallery. I had found it beneath the table during the move, blank except for 2 screw holes and a faint rectangular shadow where names had changed over the years. Owen handed me an engraving tool. I made a new label for Ruth's painting and fixed it beside the frame. Artist. Title. Materials. Owner. Nothing about Voss house. Nothing borrowed from a family name. The letters were slightly crooked. I left them that way.